Hi friends! Thanks for joining me today. You're probably here because you're interested in 3D printing or maybe 3D design or coding, and if that's the case, we're going to have so much fun today. We're going to be working with a program called BlocksCAD, which is a free web-based resource that will allow you to combine your love of coding to create a 3D file that you can actually then print out on one of our 3D printers here. So let's get started. Okay, so first things first, you're going to want to join us on the website blockscad3d.com. So you can see I have the URL right up here, and you can log in and create your own free account if you want to. They also have a create button where you can go ahead and just start creating and worry about creating a login later on. So this is the page that you'll see when you go ahead and start to create things. We've got two windows here. Over on the right-hand side, we have our render window, and this is where anything that we create is actually going to end up showing up. It's going to be on this three-dimensional plane right here. Right here, this big white space is going to be our workspace, and that's where we're going to drag and drop all of our coding blocks into. Over on the far left-hand panel, we have our toolbox, so to speak, and this is where all of our shapes, our blocks for coding, anything like that is going to live, is going to be right over here. So to just give you a nice little example of how this works, we're going to start by creating a 3D shape. And when we click on this dark green 3D shapes button at the top, we're going to get a selection of 3D shapes to work with. The first one is sphere, the second being a cube, the third being a cylinder, and the last one being a torus, which if everybody is new to this, you can kind of see here, a torus looks a little bit like a donut. We're going to select a sphere. We're going to click, drag, and drop it into our workspace. Now you'll notice that nothing automatically populated over here in our render window. So what we need to do is click render down at the very bottom, and there you go. We have a sphere. To get rid of this, if you create a block and you put it into your workspace and you don't really want to work with it anymore, to get rid of that, you're just going to click on it and drag and drop it over back on your toolbox here, and you can get rid of it. Another thing that you can do is to just right click on it and click delete to blocks, and then you can delete all your blocks there. So you'll see I need to click render again to reflect the changes that I've made in my workspace here. And now we can really get started on making our ice cream cone. So first things first, how do we create a cone shape out of a sphere, a cube, a cylinder, and a torus? Well, our best bet is going to be start working with the cylinder, which you can see here has a top radius and a bottom radius. I'm going to go ahead and click and drag that into here, render, and there's our cylinder. So for starters, let's make our cylinder a little bit taller, say 15 millimeters in height. That looks good there. And now you'll see here that these two radii are locked. So if I change one of them to 9, it automatically changes the other one. But we don't have to have them locked. We can unlock that radius. And then I can say that radius 2 is actually, instead of 9, 0. Let's see what happens then. Now we've created a cone, which is great. That's exactly what we wanted to do. It is kind of upside down from a traditional cone like what we wanted. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this back to 10, and we're going to change radius 1 to 0. So for a reminder, radius 2 is now 10, radius 1 is 0. Let's click render, and there is the beginning of our ice cream cone. Check that out. Ice cream cones aren't necessarily pink though, so let's work on changing the color of things. For starters, in your render window, you have the little pink square down here at the bottom, which you can use to change to a couple of colors. But neither of those really look like ice cream cones, and what that's going to do is going to change the color of everything in your render window and not just the individual shape. We would like to change the color of the individual shape. So in order to do that, we'll come over to our transform panel here, the dark blue one, and you'll see that there is a block for color. So let's drag that out here. In order to apply this color change to our cone. We're just going to snap it right on top like that. And if I click render, now my cone is yellow. Still not quite the ice cream shaped color that I wanted, so I'm going to go with this nice beigey brown here, and now that looks a little bit more like an ice cream cone, doesn't it? Very good. I'll zoom in a little bit. So awesome. We have the base of our ice cream cone. Now we're starting to start working on the scoops of ice cream. What we're going to do is we're going to come up here to 3D shapes, and we're going to drag a sphere down into our workspace. Let's click render. That's going to give us a pretty big sphere, and as you can see, we're not in the right space because we want it to be on top of our ice cream cone and not underneath it. So let's go ahead and start by making the sphere a little bit smaller. I'm going to say maybe 9 millimeters. A little bit smaller. Perfect. That feels good. And then now what I need to do is I actually need to move this up along the z-axis. You see we have 3 axes here. This red line represents the x-axis. The green line here represents the y-axis, and you can even see over here there's a little y. And then this blue line that's going straight up and down, that's going to be our z-axis. So that's really going to help you when you're making some measurements. To move this along any of the 3 axes, we're going to have to use another transformation. And it's going to be your bread and butter of basically everything that you're doing in BlocksCAD. It's your translate transformation. So I'm going to click on that, pull it down, and put it right on top of that sphere. So you can see here we have movements in the X, Y, and Z axes. Let's go ahead and move it up 15 and see where that gets us, because remember the height of our cylinder is 15. Let's see where that ends up getting us. Very close to being on top of our cone, but you'll see that we need to go up a little bit more. So let's try 20. There we go. Now it's right on top, and you can move this around a little bit if you want. I'm going to see how 18 looks. That looks like an ice cream cone, right? It's like a pretty good ice cream cone, I think. So if you want, you can leave your ice cream scoop to be strawberry flavored if you want, or we can do just like we did before, and you can apply color on top of the translate block. You'll see that the more blocks that you add on top, you just kind of nest them in there. So we can change the color of that to be maybe vanilla, something like that. There we go, a nice vanilla cone. But we're more interesting than just a plain vanilla cone, right? So let's create another scoop of ice cream. You could, of course, do this by dragging shapes and translate blocks down just like you did before, or we can right-click and duplicate the series of blocks that we had before here. Now, if I click render, it's not really going to look like anything happened, right? Everything looks about the same, but that's because both of these spheres are in the same spot. So let's move this sphere up a little bit. We'll say to like 26, something like that. There we go. Nice little ice cream block. I'm going to go up to 28. That's starting to look good, right? So let's change that to a nice chocolate scoop. Now we're getting somewhere, right? And of course, if you wanted to add a third, we just right-click and duplicate that again. Move it up maybe 38, another 10 millimeters, and then render. This is really starting to look like a good ice cream cone. If you click on this, let's say we would like a nice strawberry scoop on top. And now you have an excellent summer treat. So the great thing about BlocksCAD is that not only are you learning about how to create a 3-dimensional design, but you can actually create this in real life. When you're ready to actually make this on a 3D printer, you can click Generate STL at the bottom here, and that'll actually just go ahead and download. You can see download that as an STL file, which is the file format that 3D printers usually work with. Thanks for joining us today. If you have any ice cream cones that you've created, maybe you can take a picture of it or a little screenshot and then add it to the comments and let us know how it looks. Join us next time to learn how to create an awesome name tag. Thanks again.